That was AWOL by Bob Becker, performed by Kenny Hahn, Tom Håkanson. Did I mispronounce
No,
that?
no, it's funny. It's actually the little "oa" is pronounced like an O, so it's Håkanson.
Håkanson.
Yes.
Kenny Hahn, Tom Håkanson, John Nathan, Nina Lim, and Jake Miller. And as you were able to hear from that, we have Tom Håkanson in the studio with us today.
I'm waving, but none of you can see it.
And by today, I mean February 7th, because this is a pre-recorded interview. And I learned about 15 minutes ago that if we don't say that, we can get fined $50,000.
Oh, wow, fun.
Yeah.
Is that an FCC thing? Or
It is.
It is.
It just happened to a station in the Midwest.
Oh, wow.
They were faking. I don't think it would be as bad for us because we're not trying to fake that this is a live performance. But
right.
they were faking pre-recorded stuff as being live stuff. And the FCC went, that's not cool. Here's a big, big stack of money you got to pay us now.
Okay. Gotcha. Fun.
So let's talk about AWOL for a second.
So
Go for it.
This piece is based off of a drummer by the name of, he's a incredibly versatile and very well-versed drummer in both jazz, and he's done some more classical stuff, but he's mostly known for jazz and rock. And this piece is based off of a solo that he made popular called Crazy Army. It's actually roughly about in the middle of the song when it comes up. This piece that's written by Bob Becker, he's American, but he's with a group called Nexus Percussion, which is stationed up in Toronto, at the University of Toronto. That's where their residency is. And this piece is, it's not terribly difficult, but it's just like, think of it as like a bunch of friends just hanging out playing drums. Like that's how kind of we treated it when we went to play it. Like it wasn't too serious. Like if you made a mistake, it's like, oh, okay. But it wasn't like you have to get this perfectly right, which is a lot of what happens when you play music. Is like you have to make sure everything's lined up in the right spots. But here it was a lot more lax, a lot more free flowing. And even in the middle, like when the timbales came in, like that part, there was no music. It was just like solo for these 16 bars and just do whatever. So it's a lot more free form than usual.
Sounds like a good time.
Yes.
Especially in like, this was a pretty classical-ish concert.
Yeah.
With you have 3 Bach pieces.
Yeah. A lot of I mean, Bach really works on anything.
True.
I mean, the kind of style that he's written in just kind of works on whatever instrument you have, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, right? Because typically when we write music, we're like, okay, because I write music on occasion. When you write a piece, you're like, I'm going to write it for this thing, and you want to take all the advantage of this. With kind of the older style that he was doing, he wasn't really thinking so much about, I want this for this specific instrument. I mean, like the first piece, the second piece on the program is Little Fugue in G minor. Like that was originally written for organ, but I mean, a bunch of people play it. Like I've seen marching bands do it. I've seen mallet quartets do it, like we did, and I've seen like string quartets do it. Like it's translates really well across pretty much anything.
Yeah. I am a Bach noob.
Okay.
I like the cello one.
Yeah, the cello sonata.
the famous like.
Yeah. If you have a chance to listen to the start of, I think it's the second one. That one's really nice. I think it was written. I'm kind of walking on dangerous territory when I say this, but he wrote it right about, I think, when his first wife died, and you can hear like the real sorrow in it. Again, that's walking on landmines because I know people that don't like to associate like the historical with the actual music, but I think it's important.
This is a very, very strict radio station, Mr. Håkanson.
Am I gonna be escorted out?
Håkanson? Perhaps. We have a 3 strikes you're out policy.
Okay.
You make 3 historical references, you're out.
Okay. Well, I'm screwed.
So what was it like, because this was the only like real big percussion piece we're going to hear. In terms of like big drums.
Yeah.
It's called AWOL.
Yeah. Short for absent without leave, even though the scores actually says away without leave. But anyways, yeah. What are you asking about that? Like in terms of like how it was to rehearse, or just
Was there any different way of like preparation for this particular song other than or was the casual stuff you were talking about 5 minutes ago the difference between this song and the rest of them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like this piece is not. It sounds serious, but I mean, we kind of as people say, New Orleans, put a little grease on it, where it's not meant to be perfectly in time. I mean, most pieces are supposed to like you have to have perfect time, but for this, you know, like I said, it was fine if you're a little out, it's fine if you're in, and like have fun with it. Like that was the most important thing. I think for every piece on this concert, it's like the goal is to have fun with it, because making music should be fun. But especially, well, we pretend. No, I'm kidding. But no, but for that, it was tons of fun just laying back and doing stuff. And actually, we had a move where everybody walked in, where everybody came in on different drums. That was decided like, yeah, let's do this to like open the concert. Like I think we decided that like the day before.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Getting that improv.
Yeah.
As in you had over 24 hours to prepare.
I mean, it's like a walk on. It's like nothing. It's nothing crazy. So.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. So our next song is called Little Fugue in G Minor by Johann Sebastian Bach, arranged for a marimba quartet by James L. Moore. Let's take a listen. listening to 91.9 KCSB-FM in Santa Barbara. The concert you're listening to is Carl Geiringer Hall, which premiered February 5th, 2020, 7:30 p.m. for the percussion ensemble Mostly Mallets. We have a percussionist from that ensemble here as a pre-recorded interview recorded February 7th, 2020. Thomas Håkanson. I'm Ryan Scibetta. With me in the studio is Quill Sang. This is In the Spotlight. Thanks for listening. That was Little Fugue in G minor by Johann Sebastian Bach, arranged for Marimba Quartet by James Elmore, and performed by Ethan Wu, Jake Miller, Michael Sun, and Kiana Kaneshiro. Did I pronounce all those correctly?
Let's see. Kane, if I'm gonna be traditional Japanese pronunciation, it'd be Kaneshiro, but Kaneshiro, I think it'd be fine. Yeah. I'm a linguist on the side, so sometimes I knock people for pronunciation, but I'm terrible at it myself.
I'm sorry, Kiana. So, or Kiona.
Kiona. Yeah. No, she's really talented. Like, I think she only started out playing like 2 pieces this quarter, because the thing with this concert is we tend to be very modular with like who plays what, and you know she just kept getting pieces, and she was just fine with like everything that was thrown at her. It was really incredible. Yeah.
Could you elaborate on the sort of like modular aspect of this overall concert?
So, you know, typically with an ensemble, and this is variable to some degree, you know, you come in, everybody's playing pieces, and like I'll give you an example. Like I'm in the University Wind Ensemble right now. Like we're playing one of the pieces we're playing in there right now is fairly newly written piece by composer Mark Camphouse called, let me see if I can get this right in the right order, Prelude, Processional, and Postlude. Okay, and the way it is, everybody sits down, they all come in, they all play their instruments. Then we go to the next song, and etc. And it's a little different in the back because, you know, we have 8 percussionists in there, right? Okay, not every piece requires 8 percussionists, so people swap out and things like that. And that idea of swapping out is a lot like what the percussion ensemble is here. We have everybody on set pieces, and they have like times that they rehearse during class time, or a lot of times they do it outside of class time, like especially if it's like a small duet that they have. They'll schedule their own time, and then larger pieces like AWOL and a couple of others on these, like, will have more people like come in actually like into the hall and be like, okay, we're going to sit down, we're all going to rehearse this. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a strict rehearsal schedule as an orchestral, and even in orchestra, like if you're playing like a giant work and then you have something that's like a lot smaller, like 10 player ensemble, you might have people come in and come out of that. So I'm actually working on a project where like each this is rehearsal, by the way, each movement is like a different instrumentation. And so the way I ask for people, it's for like a small chamber ensemble, but every small little thing is different. And when I ask people to come in, I'm like, okay, so we'll just have the pianists for this time, and then we'll go to like the strings, and then we'll have like the clarinet come in and like sorry,
no worries.
And then we have things like that, so that everybody isn't having their time wasted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of an important aspect. It's like I want every when people are there, they should be rehearsing.
I hear you.
And not sitting around. You know what I mean?
I used to do mock trial. And if you were playing a witness, or another example would be like if you're a one scene wonder in a theater production, and you get your one scene, and then you just sit there for 2 hours.
Right.
And if it's something like a theater rehearsal, that's 8 hours.
That's true. But typically, like in the professional world, professionals aren't called in until like 2 rehearsals before the concert. So sometimes, a little secret, sometimes the gigs with less things on, I'm actually a lot happier about, because then I don't have to like think as much. Now, if it's like one note, like I have to stress about that one note, because if you miss that one note,
you're just done.
You've missed 100% of everything, right? That's why there's a composer by the name of Anton Bruckner. Confused for a second. Anton Bruckner was German composer, and he used percussion very sparingly. In his Seventh Symphony, there's one crash cymbal.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, there's
Go
nothing
for
else.
it.
There's nothing else.
Wait, that's the only percussion, or that's the only thing that particular percussionist does?
No, that's well, if you want to count like timpani, which is like a separate. I mean,
What's timpani?
okay, so timpani are the historical name for them is kettle drums, and they're these giant circular things, not to be confused with bass drums because that's something different. But they're tunable drums, essentially, and historically they're actually seen as an extension of the brass.
Huh.
So in orchestration, when you look at them, they often are coupled with brass, and not saying they're a bass instrument, but they play the bass role.
Of brass?
Well, they play the bass role in like the ensemble. I mean, above like the tuba, of course, but like they were historically seen as a way to emphasize things that the brass would play, or emphasize things that the orchestra would play. Timpani players are typically the highest paid in the orchestra.
Whoa.
One, because if the timpani screws up, especially in a hard spot, the entire orchestra is going to wreck. Like that's how typically important their part is. And then percussion is like everything. Percussion in quotes, it's everything outside of that. So cymbals, bass drum, wood block sometimes shows up. Triangle shows up a lot. Tambourine, and then like the more obscure things, like sometimes you get bongos. Xylophone is actually a pretty common one. Glockenspiel, etc., etc. And I've had to be asked to play on some weird things. Like there was a piece that was based on a series of Greek dances, and at the very end of the piece, we had to smash a plate. We didn't have to yell "Opa," but we had to smash a plate to like kind of simulate like what was actually happening. So,
Heck yeah.
yeah.
You know, I have a kind of macabre question. You mentioned that timpani players are the most well paid in the orchestra.
Yes.
Who is the least well paid in the orchestra?
Oh, I mean, you know, I don't really know like the answer to that. Like, I don't think there's somebody that's like the least paid in the orchestra. But I know that timpani players like. I also have to say timpani players have huge egos. That's typically kind of like in the canon. But in terms, I don't know who gets least paid. I mean,
I would like to emphasize at this point that this is the opinion of Tom Håkanson and not the opinion of KCSB at large. Please do not sue us for defamation. Okay, please continue.
oh jeez. What were we going to talk about after?
How garbage the egos of timpani players are.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, but I mean, a lot of people in orchestra tend to have egos, and it's just kind of something you got to deal with.
Our next track is Homage to Keith Jarrett and Gary Burton. For those of us who are not familiar with Keith Jarrett's work, could you give a brief, 5-second description of what the viewer is about to hear?
Jazz pianist.
Okay.
And Gary Burton is actually a very well-known vibraphone player. So, although interestingly, you'll hear no piano in this. It's just flute and vibraphone. Yeah.
Well, here is a jazz pianist song with no piano, but very jazz. Homage to Keith Jarrett and Gary Burton by Barbara Kolb, performed by Ethan Shue on the flute and Cole Williams on the vibraphone. You're listening to KCSB-FM in Santa Barbara, located at frequency 91.9 or online at kcsb.org. That was Homage to Keith Jarrett and Gary Burton by Barbara Kolb, performed by Ethan Chu and Cole Williams on the flute and vibraphone, respectively. So this song I feel like is the most whack, other than probably the typewriter, which we will get to.
Yeah.
This song is the most whack that we have in the program with all the.
Well, the
cool
sheet
stuff.
the sheet music's actually very interesting because I've glanced over it, but there's no time signature, like it's
What?
all. So the way it's written is it's just unmetered, and there's time markings. So it'll be like play this note for 10 seconds or whatever, and then play this note for like 3 seconds, and they're like spaced out in like a spatial relation to each other.
Is it like? So just each phrase is like its own tempo, or?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, because you have like all these interjections, and when they do come in together, like it shows like, oh, this is where this person should enter, and there's like a little dashed line to indicate, okay, this is how the line trades off, and
That
this
makes
is where
sense.
things go, and yeah, it's probably the most contemporary piece on the program, next to. No, actually, I would say that's probably the most contemporary piece, like contemporary sounding piece on the program. I don't know much about Barbara Kolb, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember her name being mentioned. It was just Keith Jarrett.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually know it was Barbara Kolb until I looked at this pamphlet to say
Okay.
this song is by Barbara Kolb. So, is Keith Jarrett someone who gets a lot of homages to?
He's somebody that people reference a lot. I mean, there's a common practice in jazz called quoting.
Go for it.
Which is essentially where if you're soloing, because how jazz forms works, and this is a very elementary explanation of this, but
We'll take it.
typically when you play through jazz, you have what's called the head, which is the melody, and you have the chord changes over it, and then what you do is you do the solo over that. Okay, and a lot of people do this thing called quoting, which is where they'll insert a lot of excerpts of some famous piece, and they'll put it in their solo. Kind of, and it can be in like a humorous way, it can be in a very serious way, and it's usually for like an effect, and it's for something the audience to recognize.
So that's what the official term is for the lick.
Yes, I mean it is a quote in in a sort of sense, even if it's a very very repetitive one. But I think like the lick.
Da 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 da.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the lick originated. There's this YouTube video called The Lick, and it's just a bunch of people playing this da 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 figure, and how it crops up in like every single style, like jazz, classical, rock, fusion, what have you. And it's just this kind of thing that just sounds good for some reason, and like I've heard it crop up in like the least expected of places. Like I've heard it everything from like progressive rock to like I was watching an anime yesterday, and it just like cropped up in the music. I was like, oh great.
Cool.
Yeah. But Keith Jarrett, he's very well known for like his improvisations of things. So when you improvise over a song, like you'll have the melody, and it's not improvisation in like a much stricter sense. It's improvising chords and things around the melody and things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I remember once hearing Pop Goes the Weasel out of nowhere and just laughing for way too long.
Well, do you know like ba-da-da-da-da, like that? Like the take the A Train ending? Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like that's a very common cheesy way to like end things, and sometimes people use that as a quote for like
As
humorous
an ending,
effect,
or just to throw it in?
as an ending. But like people will often use it for like a humorous effect.
Get that water. Hydration is important.
Yes, hydrate or dihydrate. You like that?
Hey, that was my line.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I appreciate it. So our next song is my favorite, personally, in the program, Into the Air, written by Ivan Trevino, performed by Megan Kavanagh and Christina Tao, both on marimbas. You're listening to KCSB-FM 91.9 here in Santa Barbara. The person who you're hearing talk in the interviews is Thomas Håkanson, a percussionist for the ensemble Mostly Mullets, directed by John Nathan, which performed in Carl Geiringer Hall February 5th. This interview is from February 7th. That was Into the Air by Ivan Trevino, performed by Megan Kavanagh and Christina Tao on marimbas. So this song reminded me, I noticed that there was had a sort of rain effect with just the sheer barrage of notes without sounding like a barrage of notes.
Yeah. So a little bit of background about Ivan Trevino. He is a composer. I think he's at Eastman School of Music, which is out on the East Coast. And his stuff is kind of in the modern style of what we call pan-diatonicism. And what that is typically with a scale. You have certain ways that scale behaves. Like da-da is like a very common one when you do like a 5-1 progression. And in this sort of sense, there's a lot more ideas on like close voicings, like notes right next to each other that are played, and that gives this kind of very ethereal vibe, which you hear in the middle section of the piece with that marimba just in the background, fading in and fading out. A lot of things that are becoming more popular is melodies tend to be more syncopated, tend to like have big register jumps. It's like things like that.
And that's more popular like with contemporary composers or
one canon. There's like a bunch of canons, but like people that are a little more, I don't want to say on the conservative side because it sounds wrong, but like on the more
reserved
poppy side. Like kind of there's like a very interesting relation to how a lot of contemporary music is written in its relation to pop music, and I think this is like a perfect example of this.
So like the musicians who are making music that's like easier to listen to, or
I wouldn't say that because that kind of devalues the music.
Fair.
But I would say that it's a lot more like cross relational aspect between pop music, where what's coming out of the pop EDM and then what's coming into kind of concert halls that we hear. Yeah.
Are there any artists who do both?
Yes. There is a composer by the name of Carolyn Shaw.
Carolyn Shaw.
And
homework assignment number 2.
But she won the Pulitzer Prize in, was it 2013 or 2014? I think it was one of the two. And if it wasn't, apologies to Carolyn Shaw or any of her friends if they're listening to this. I'm messing this up. But what she's worked with like Kendrick Lamar on things in the past.
Whoa.
But she has the piece that she won the Pulitzer Prize for is called Partita for 8 Voices, which is a really strange concept to have, like a partita, which is based on like these old dance forms that you have in Baroque music, like Gigue, Allemande, and then the last movement is something called a Passacaglia, which is where you start with a bass line and that bass line moves throughout the voices, and the bass line is always there, but what's around it changes.
Ah.
Yeah.
So the bass line takes on like different characteristics.
Yeah. Well,
based on
what's happening.
Based on.
Oh, you're funny.
What's happening around it.
It's that time.
Yes,
it's that time. Yeah.
Talk to Quill, the engineer whose name I keep saying every time we cut, who is probably in the studio right now, face palming and glaring at me as I grin back. You can just get that visual picture to accompany this audio programming.
Anyways, Where were we?
We're talking about you're right. We're talking about bass lines. You and I, we need to get this interview back to basics.
Stop, please.
All right.
Next song.
Next song. I'm really looking for another bass pun. 3 preludes. Prelude number 1 in E minor. Prelude number 1, the foundational.
Okay, we can't.
Not only is it the first one, but it's the prelude. Both building blocks for the rest of the symphony.
Oh my god. You can't see it, but he's giving me the biggest grin. He's just like,
I am having a very good time. Yes.
and I'm questioning my enjoyability. No, I'm having fun. Don't worry.
Anyway, the song you're about to hear, 3 preludes. Prelude number 1 in E minor by Ney Rosario, performed by a soloist, Nina Lim, on marimba. That was Nina Lim performing 3 preludes. Prelude number 1 in E minor by Ney Rosario. Am I pronouncing that right?
I don't know, because I have a Portuguese friend, and they say that it's something like Neurosauro. Rosauro. There's a weird when you do like U's in Brazilian Portuguese, because he's Brazilian. You do like a O sound, Neurosauro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Portuguese phonology is something really weird. It's not weird. It's just interesting. But okay, here's an example. Take the name. In Spanish, you'd say Carlos Marquez, or Marquez, depending on where you're from. In Portuguese, Portuguese, it might sound something like Carlos Marques. And then in Brazil, they'd say Carlos Marques, or Marques. Yeah, Marques. So the sh sound is replaced for s.
Well, in English, you'd say Karl Marx, and in Russian, you'd say comrade.
I know there's a joke in there, but I'm not sure where I follow it.
Karl Marx, grandfather of the communist revolution.
Right. But I wasn't sure where that was going.
This is college radio. We have to bring up communism.
Okay, yeah.
This may be a non-political show, and once again, I would like to bring to attention that Ryan Scibetta's communist leanings that may or may not exist are the property of the host and not of KCSB itself. This organization is nonpartisan. Please don't sue us. Thank you.
Has nonpartisan.
Yes.
Okay.
It has nonpartisan.
Yeah. But he's a very famous Brazilian soloist, and he's got a bunch of different pieces he's written. One of my favorites is he has a concerto for marimba and orchestra.
Ooh.
Or it's marimba, and I've seen it done with a number of ensembles. I've seen it done with like marimba and piano. I've seen it done with like marimba and like percussion ensemble.
So is this just the solo from one of those marimba and accompanying stuff?
No. This is just a completely separate. Like when we talk about preludes, they're typically for a single instrument.
Does the other instruments come in later, or is it like the whole thing is the solo for the single instrument?
Yeah, it's just a whole solo for a single instrument. I mean,
Cool.
Chopin wrote a number of preludes. Same with like Liszt and a lot of other pretty famous piano composers.
You're just tuning in to KCSB-FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara. I'm Ryan Scibetta. With me in the studio is Quill Sang. And the guest you're hearing talk is Thomas Håkanson, a percussionist for the UCSB Percussion Ensemble. They just had their concert, Mostly Mallets, February 5th, 2020. And we recorded an interview February 7th to talk about that concert. That's what you're listening to. Thanks for tuning in.